We have a variety of NHL news to discuss today, including another RFA signing. We have several injury updates, some news about the NHL Waiver Wire, and a whole bunch of other NHL news and rumors. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have several news items to discuss today, so let's jump right in and get started here. First of all, longtime NHL defenseman Dan Girardi has announced his retirement. Of course, he played with the New York Rangers for quite a long period of time, played with Tampa as well. Girardi was a guy who went undrafted, but still made his way to the NHL, battling his way through the minor leagues. Came close to getting 1,000 NHL games played, fell a little bit short. Obviously, unfortunately, he's not going to hit that mark, but obviously Girardi, I think, had a pretty decent career. Had to work hard to where he's at. And his time in the NHL has now come to a close. Of course, he was an unrestricted free agent this summer. I'm not sure if he was actively looking for a contract or not, but he said basically he's excited for the next chapter of his life. I know he's also mentioned that his body's excited that hockey is over as well, because he certainly had his fair share of injuries over the years, and obviously over a long career, it certainly is hard on your body. So best of luck to Dan Girardi. I think he had a pretty solid career given how hard he had to work to get where he was. Now, staying with Rangers defenseman Tony DeAngelo, RFA's finally come to terms and signed a new contract here with the Rangers. We'd heard numerous reports that the Rangers were not going to budge off of their $925,000 offer to DeAngelo, and that is what he ended up signing and accepting here. So he's on board for one more year, $925K. I do think this is a great signing for the Rangers. It's a really cheap contract given what he was able to provide last year. I do expect him to continue to grow and develop, hopefully take another step this year, and I would fully suspect his next contract to certainly be much more significant value in terms of term and dollars. I think $925 for a player that can provide as much offense from the blue line like him is a bit of a steal. I'm not quite sure exactly why they're playing hardball with him so much. It really could have went in, even around the 1.5 million range or something like that. In fact, even still, I think would have been a pretty valuable, fair signing. But either way, at least he's under contract, gets into training camp now with the New York Rangers, and that'll complete their complement of RFAs that are looking to be signed. Of course, there's so many other guys out there that remain unsigned, like Patrik Laine, Mikko, Rantanen, of course, both share an agent together, Mike Liut. Liut's been quoted on radio recently saying that both deals are pretty far apart. There's some pretty significant gaps. We have some reports between the Avalanche and Mikko Rantanen that there's some pretty significant gaps. Apparently, the Avs are pretty interested in a long-term deal, anywhere from 6 to 8 years, averaging anywhere from $8.4 to $8.75 million. Of course, the Avalanche do have a lot of cap space. They have about $15 million to work with, so certainly not an issue of salary cap space in their regard. I know it's a little bit tricky. Obviously, they have other players like Nathan MacKinnon, who's on a very much a bargain contract, but you have to remember as well that Nathan MacKinnon's career certainly started slower than Rantanen's did. MacKinnon ended up putting up 50, 60 points throughout his ELC. Even the first year of his new contract, he was still in that 60-point range. Then he exploded up into the 90-plus range and has been there for the past few years and has become one of the top players in the NHL. But it took him a little bit longer to get there, where Rantanen's got his last 2 years of his ELC at 80-plus points. So he certainly has the production to demand more money out of the entry-level contract. Mike Liut feels that Rantanen is comparable to Mitch Marner. I don't think he'll get quite as much as Marner, but I'm not sure they're asking for that same contract. But he did indicate he felt that the Marner contract was a fair comparable, that they're similar type players and certainly play a very similar valuable role to their team. So therefore, I think that it's fair to say that there is a big gap. With Marner getting close to $11 million, I would imagine that Liut and Rantanen are likely looking for at least 10 or 10 point something is likely what they're asking for. And if the Avs are 8.5 to 8.75 range, there's probably fair to say there's probably around or close to a $2 million difference in dollars there. I think that term is probably fine, given that Marner get a 6-year term. They probably don't have too much of a difficulty coming to terms on that part of it, but the money is just not there. Obviously, MacKinnon is making $6.3 million, but you can't really factor that in. Like, even though Rantanen's contract might be significantly more than MacKinnon, like I said, their careers might be similar now, but at the same time, they were not similar coming out of their ELC. And the landscape and the cap and the whole market has changed. So hopefully the Avalanche and Rantanen can get this resolved soon, but it looks as though there is a significant gap right now between the two sides. Now, speaking of RFAs and unsigned players, let's jump over to Patrik Patrik Laine, the other client here from Mike Liud. Of course, there's a big gap in contract negotiations there as well. I know we'd heard reports before the Jets were offering somewhere around that $5.5 million range, but if he's going to do a short-term deal, I'm going to say it's going to have to be at least 6+ for sure for Laine, and maybe a 2 or 3 year contract. I think 3 years was the most likely term being discussed before. I think both sides are probably comfortable with a bridge deal, especially Laine. I mean, really, I think he owes it to himself to kind of get back to getting 40+ goal scoring ways and getting back to playing stronger than he did last year and show that he can be a big time player. Obviously, he's expressed his desire publicly. There's been a lot of drama lately to play with the top players, top lines, and as a result of those comments, he did end up having an exchange with his center iceman for the most part over the last year or two. And that was Brian Little, where they did have some text and phone conversations. Laine did apologize, making sure that Brian Little knew that what he was saying wasn't necessarily a knock on him per se, but it looks as though the Jets are handling it very well between what you heard Brian Little say, and even comments from Captain Blake Wheeler. They're trying to make sure that Laine understands he's welcome back here with open arms, and they're trying to put it all behind them, that they're willing to make some changes to get everything back in order. So we will see if everything can be sorted out in Winnipeg and they can get Laine back in the fold, but we'll see. They certainly need to come up in money that they're offering there as well. There hasn't been much talk about Kyle Connor. On the other hand, all we know is that they would really both like a long-term deal, but clearly they can't come to terms on money, and obviously those negotiations will continue, but there hasn't really been nearly as much talk as the Laine situation with all the public drama we've seen as of late. Staying with the Jets for a moment here, there is some updates on Dustin Byfuglien. I guess they're more of speculation than anything else, but NHL insider Elliot Friedman indicated that he's not completely convinced that Byfuglien's seriously considering retirement. He feels that Byfuglien went through some injuries last year, especially with his foot, and that maybe coming into the season he wasn't quite fully recovered, fully healed, and just was not ready for the long grind of an NHL season. Basically, it sounded kind of what we heard at a Justin Williams camp when he decided he was not signing or was not going to play, but he wasn't announcing his retirement either, and that he feels that maybe Byfuglien will want to come back later in the year once he's had some more time. But obviously, if it is injury related, that should allow the Jets some long-term injury reserve relief on the cap if they need it. So either way, if that is the real reason, then at least it helps Winnipeg when it comes to their cap situation. But hopefully we get some actual updates from Byfuglien soon before the season starts, so Winnipeg knows what they're dealing with here longer term. Now on to some NHL injury updates. Obviously, we've had a lot of preseason games. We've seen some injuries already. The Flyers are dealing with a slew of them, including guys like Tyler Pitlick, Nolan Patrick, and Curtis Gabriel. Pitlick ended up having a wrist surgery. He's going to be out for at least a week. Patrick's also week to week, as well as Gabriel. Patrick with an upper body injury, Gabriel with a lower body injury, but in all cases there, at least it doesn't seem to be anything too serious. They should all be ready before the season actually gets underway. The Buffalo Sabres are going to be without defenseman Brandon Montour for the rest of training camp, the rest of the preseason. He is dealing with a hand or wrist injury, and we won't have any more updates until we get closer to the NHL season getting underway. So it looks as though he might not even be ready for the start of the season in October. So I guess we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure exactly how serious it might be, but it might be something they just want to keep an eye on. It might need a little bit of time before they can really properly assess. But Montour, unfortunately for the Sabres, will be out for the remaining part of the preseason. The Montreal Canadiens are going to be without youngster Ryan Poehling, and it's hard to say how long. He has been diagnosed with having a concussion. Obviously, they had a preseason game with the Florida Panthers, and he ended up taking a big hit from Panthers forward Dryden Hunt, and ended up hitting his head on the glass. To me, the hit looked clean. It looked like he got all shoulder on the hit. I mean, you can let me know what you think down in the comments if you watched the game or you saw the hit, but ultimately, I thought the hit was clean. I didn't think it was a dirty hit. It looks like he made shoulder contact, but Poehling's head did bump into the glass afterwards. He certainly looked woozy, wobbly, had a hard time getting to the bench, and has been diagnosed with a concussion. So unfortunately for the young forward who's trying to make an impression and get onto this team for opening night, it's certainly going to be derailed there a bit. When you're dealing with concussions, you just don't know how long it's going to take for the symptoms to subside. So, he could be okay in a few days. It could be a few weeks. We really don't know at this point. So hopefully Poehling will be okay in a shorter term and can have an impact here. But guys like him and Nick Suzuki are certainly fighting for roster spots within the Montreal Canadiens. They have a slew of forwards that they're fighting with here. Montreal can keep them and put them on the roster if they really want to, but they will have to move some other bodies either through the waiver wire to the minors, or maybe even consider a trade, which we've heard of before as well. So we'll see. But unfortunately for Poehling, he's out with a concussion, and we'll see how long it takes him to come back. Of course, today is the first day for the NHL waiver wire to be active as well. There is several players on there. Nothing too surprising, most of which are players who would have been assigned to the American Hockey League anyway. The most significant is both goaltenders from the Tampa Bay Lightning organization, with with Louis Domingue and Mike Condon both being on the waiver wire. Of course, we discussed before that that's likely what was going to happen coming out of training camp. Obviously, they've got Vasilevsky and Patrik Laine, who are going to be your NHL tandem, and these two guys would both require waivers to play in their AHL team. It's been no secret that Tampa's been trying to trade Domingue to get him a start somewhere else, so hopefully more of an opportunity, and that has not been able to happen. They have not been able to facilitate a trade as of yet, so both players are on the waiver wire, so we'll see by noon Eastern time tomorrow if they've been claimed and if they're going to be having a jump to another NHL team, or if they'll end up being assigned to Tampa's AHL affiliate. But there are some other players on waivers, but they are the most significant ones with NHL experience here for today. One other veteran as well, St. Louis Blues had Jordan Nolan on waivers to go to their American Hockey League affiliate. That's not a huge surprise. He did spend a fair bit of time there last year as well. More rumors as well regarding Sharks prospect defenseman Ryan Merkley. We discussed a few weeks ago that he likely wasn't going to be returning to his junior team in Peterborough, that they were looking to trade him and really didn't want him back to be part of their organization at all. We hadn't really seen a whole lot of comments from the Sharks organization. Not quite clear how they felt about things or what they might do to help Merkley or what they were going to proceed here. But there is some talk that he might be signing to play with a junior B team in Ontario, which certainly would be a step down for him, considering how he's played at the major junior level. I can only imagine how dominant of a player he'd be there. I don't really know if that'd be great for his development because obviously I think he needs stronger competition to play against. But at the same time, the things he needs to work on is really in regards to his attitude and being a good teammate and just being overall more professional. There's lots of talk about how skilled he is, and there's just as much drama and baggage that comes with him. If you're not overly familiar with Merkley and the whole situation, you can check out the other video. I'll link it up here in the YouTube cards where we went in a little bit more detail of what was going on. But we'll see what happens. But there's some talk now that he might basically be out of the OHL completely, might have to sign and play Junior B, which, like I said, is rumored. I haven't seen a full confirmation that indeed has happened. Waiting for comments from the Sharks, which there hasn't really been any yet. He's been still in training camp with them as well. So we'll see what happens here. But Ryan Merkley certainly got more drama around him, like he had been in the last number of years leading up to him being drafted. Hopefully the Sharks can help straighten him out and get his career on track, because he's a very, very talented young man, and we'll see if he does end up playing Junior B for the coming year. Now, one other interesting news item I came across today as well involves the KHL and the fact that they're going to have a $15 million per year salary cap starting next year. So any players in their league that's going to be a free agent next offseason will likely have more interest than normal to make the jump over to the NHL and have an opportunity to earn more money. So we might see more of an influx of more Russian players looking to make that jump. Obviously, there usually is a few every year that try to make their mark in the NHL. It doesn't always work out, but either way, there's been a lot of players that have been content to play over there. But with this cap situation coming into play next year, many expect there to be more interest for them to jump over. So would not be surprised to see NHL teams scouting more players, especially ones that are going to be free agent next summer, to see if they can find themselves some talent to add to their NHL teams for next year. That's all your latest news and notes here for today. So always want to know your thoughts and opinions on everything we discuss. Let me know what you think down in the comments section, and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.